cannot pay too great a tribute to all the men and women of all ranks and in the supporting civilian services who, by their spirit, loyalty, and devotion, have contributed so much to the record of the Royal Canadian Navy.
Admiral, I recall that in 1944, I believe it was, you were doing operations in the Channel, and Athabascan was sunk, and you had a pretty horrendous time. I remember rescuing survivors, and when there were E-boats in the vicinity and whatnot. Could you enlighten us about that experience?
Well, there's been a lot written about it, and it sounds horrendous. Actually, it was a comparatively short period of time that it was involved in the rescue operations. We were on patrol, and we got word from Plymouth that there were two ships proceeding down the channel, and it looked as if they were going to try and get around Ushant and go into Brest. So we aimed for Ushant, and thought we could just, the timing was such that we just cut them off. And that's what we did. When we were within range, we opened fire. They turned and ran, as usual. That was their policy. And I had, in the air, I had a signal 90 degrees to port together, which I'd planned earlier on in the evening, just to avoid to comb their torpedo attacks. We believed at that time that when you fired torpedoes, you fired them at right angles to your course, you know. And we knew that torpedoes would be coming towards us, so we turned. We had a signal in the air to turn that thing. But as they turned away, they opened, the bearing changed, and I cut that turn short of 90 degrees in order to keep all the guns firing. That was probably a mistake. Anyhow, we finished the turn and went on, and within a minute or two, Athabascan was stopped. All Stubbs said to me was, "I'm stopped," and then we went on past. And somebody on my bridge said, "Well, why don't we make smoke and cover them?" So we did. We swung across where Athabascan was, made smoke. And it was so, I suppose, in the meantime, we were chasing one of the destroyers. And several minutes went by before Stubbs said, "Well, I seem to be settling aft," or something like that. And I think I sent a signal that, "Get ready, prepare to be taken in tow, I will come back for you," or something. It went on. One of the destroyers went up channel, and we chased him, and eventually drove him ashore, kept pounding him after he was ashore, thinking, we thought every salvo was hitting. Actually, they all were hitting the rocks beside him and bursting, you know. We thought, big shout went up, hit every salvo. We got wise after a bit, and by that time, there were no other enemy destroyers on our screen. We weren't in touch with any others. I went back to where Athabascan was, and if I remember correctly, as we approached the position where he had last been, we fired a star shell to see if he was still afloat, you know what I'm saying. We were feeling, well, the action's over. The enemy have run, and the action's over. We struck the right spot. We ran into survivors and we could see the little lights, you know, and so on. We ran right into the middle of them. But we stopped, and we were drifting sideways, and the survivors on the starboard side couldn't swim fast enough to keep up with us. I remember shouting, encouraging them, you know. And on the port side, we had nets down and trying to pick them up. Of course, they were pretty well scattered, you know. I was scared to death. We were all scared to death in that area of mines. We needn't have been, but we were. Here we were drifting sideways, and I thought any minute we're going to strike a mine, and then we've lost 2 ships, not 1. That was uppermost in my mind. I said, we've got to get the hell out of this. Second thought was, I have no right to be here. It's getting daylight, and I'll only be blamed for hazarding another ship. So those are the 2 thoughts that drove me. And I decided when to go. I sent a message, I telephoned. He was on the quarterdeck. I said, now, I'll give you 5 minutes. And then I said, 4 minutes, 3 minutes, 2 minutes, 1 minute. And I gave him another minute, I think. And then we pulled out, and it still dragged people off the net.
How many people did you pick up?
Oh, 40 or 50. And
the
yeah.
rest that weren't killed were taken
Yeah.
prisoner, of course.
In the meantime, I had said, well, we'll lower all our boats and floats and leave them. Because these fellows got lifebelts, and they perhaps help save a few. One of the orders didn't get through. One crew of the motorboat went with the boat. Without my knowledge, I didn't know they'd gone. And they cruised around for a bit, picked up 1 or 2, and then their engine failed. In the meantime, we'd pulled out. There's a fellow called Hallam, lives in Victoria, was in the motorboat at that time. I've seen him several times since. He said when it started to get daylight, we got scared, and we had another go at getting the engine going. We finally got it going, and we picked up a few more survivors. And then we saw the German minesweeper or something approaching. So we skedaddled, headed for the British coast. And he said, strange enough, they didn't come after us. That motorboat ended up at Land's End somewhere, somewhere on the British coast. Came back with, I think, the crew and six more survivors.
I suppose an incident like this goes over and over in your mind still, does it?
Yeah. Now, I had asked twice during that period for air protection, air cover. Mm-hmm. What we were afraid of, and what we were taught to be afraid of at Plymouth, was air attack in daylight. We believed, and we were taught to believe, that the dive bombers would attack us in daylight, and we had no protection against dive bombers. No, we fully expected if the dive bombers come, we're sunk. So the whole philosophy was get the hell off the French coast before daylight. It was quite unnecessary. It was lack of intelligence. The German aircraft had long since moved up channel, thinking the invasion was going to take place away up channel somewhere. There were no aircraft in that area. I knew there was a good Canadian fighter bomber squadron at Plymouth, near Plymouth. And I felt like saying, look, tell these Canadians this is a Canadian ship and they'll come. But the reply every time was there's no air cover available. Now, all the talk about the MTBs were ordered to pick up survivors. And before they'd got halfway down, they were ordered back because it was going to be daylight. I didn't know that. I did know that they'd been ordered. I didn't know they'd been ordered back. It didn't matter. Any thoughts in my mind and anything that affected my decision to pull out was entirely what was in my mind, not what anybody else said. The Admiral, in his report, said that they had intended to tell me not to stay beyond 6 o'clock. They had intended it. They didn't tell me. No, I didn't know. There's a lot of speculation about why we pulled out and why we did this and that. In my mind was 2 thoughts. A, I'm hazarding the bloody ship, and B, we're gonna drift on a mine any minute.
Yeah. Boy, that bound to come back.
I didn't know he'd been torpedoed at that time. I thought he might have hit a mine. A lot of these things were quite unnecessary. The Plymouth Command intelligence should have been good enough to know that wasn't all this danger of air attack at dawn and daylight. And B, we should have known, and they should have told us, that that's not a good area for surface mines. The tides are so strong in the channel down there, 7 knots are normal along the coast, that they wouldn't lay mines for surface ships. They laid them for submarines, deeper and so on. But there was really no danger that I was afraid of, no danger of running on a mine. But I didn't know that. Well, I still think of that sort of thing at night and sometimes wonder what I should have done or why I did what I did.